Good evening, everyone. I'm JaVonni Brustow, and this is Petersburg Solution. I'm here with community advocate Patrick Ingram. It's been a little time since we've last seen each other. I know that we've had an election, an insurrection. Um, uh,
Uh,
according
there.
to was it Chuck Schumer, I think we had an erection as well. Pandemic, quite a few things. But how have things been for you since this post-election period?
You, it's been really good. I mean, I think this this election was much needed. I think we needed to have the necessary conversations about equity. I think we really needed to see younger faces, more diverse faces at the table and at the forefront of our city. But more importantly, we needed sound leadership. Again, democracy is democracy, and the votes do matter and they count, and the decisions were made. And so since then, my team has been still working for Ward 6 and the other constituents in Petersburg. We've been out with this huge trash initiative to pick up trash and keep our city beautiful with our One Walk at a Time initiative. We continue our updates on social media, and we're still active on Facebook and Twitter. But I think really the more important thing is we're still checking in with our constituents, and most importantly, making sure that they're connected to the necessary resources, especially in the midst of this pandemic, because it is real, it is getting worse. And that's what I am continuously doing, is making sure that at every opportunity, rather it be a city council meeting or a joint school board city council meeting, that I'm still speaking truth about the needs of our city, but most importantly, the need for our representatives to represent every single constituent every single
Yeah.
time.
And it's good that you're
But
still obviously being involved, after, not winning an election, because a lot of times people, decide to go and fold their arms and go sit in the corner.
right.
So this is always what I suggest that people should keep doing. So it's much appreciated.
And I'll say this. I mean, I know that folks think that, I'm in the groups too. We're all commenting, and I think a lot of times people think that my commentary may be rude or disrespectful. But look, at the end of the day, elections allow people to ensure that their voices are heard. And so, again, one of my responses to our parks and recreation not getting the funding and attention that it needs, to the fact that our city has increasing rates of COVID-19, and our city still has not put forth an emergency response plan and have distributed it and really shown it publicly, where it shows that we're working with nonprofits and other community partners, internal and external stakeholders, to get to safer levels, but more importantly, get ahead of this pandemic. My response is, you know, elections are real and they have consequences. So again, it's not to be negative, but it is to speak volumes to the importance of the election cycle for city council that we have approaching in the year to come.
Yes, and to bring up the pandemic, did I see correctly that we made Time Magazine for being a COVID hotspot?
We did. And this is the thing. I mean, we consistently, Petersburg, Virginia, we're consistently in the press in a negative light. And until we begin to address the needs of our community, but more importantly, create equity in our city, we're going to continuously be in Times Magazine, not for the best reasons, but for all the wrong reasons. And again, it's mind-boggling, right? Because every time you Google Petersburg, every time you hear Petersburg in a conversation outside of the city, and every time you open up a magazine like Times, I think we're always in there in a negative way. I think we were also in the Times Magazine maybe last year, I want to say, or 2 years ago, for gun violence.
Yeah, I'm
So,
letting you say this because I get tired of repeating
but again,
that.
every time we're in the Times Magazine, it's negative. We had a year where we
And at least this
saw,
time it wasn't on the cover. We were on the cover the last time.
yeah, we were on the inside.
I mean,
But the thing is,
among a list of others, but yeah.
with politics, showcasing really our country showing its most ugliest self, it would have been refreshing to leverage Petersburg and the history of Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, and his message of unity. We could have totally leveraged that with the right PR team, but more importantly, the right leadership that would have been able to push that narrative out into the world.
Yes, which that did come up during our last city council meeting. In the comment section about how Martin Luther King Day starting here in
Mhm.
Petersburg. And how is it that our city government did not manage to find something to do? Um,
Well, and even on top of
and the
that,
fact that, yeah, go ahead.
we didn't even have a message, like an official event, a virtual event, nothing for Martin Luther King Jr. Day or Day of Service. I mean, we're in the midst of a pandemic, but that does not mean that the work stops.
This is this is definitely true. A city that we have plenty to do, plenty of volunteering that could be done. And I mean, just look around. There's plenty of us online who are constantly planning events. They know who we are. I believe that one of our council members referred to, well, to you all as being the frequent flyers who are regularly abusing, well, what is not your constitutional right, the speaking during our public meetings, but that's a different story. But yes, if they wanted to have a community event, they know who to contact to be able
But
to
I will
get it
tell
done.
you, you made a good point. With and from those who don't keep track of our council meetings, in the beginning of the year, council comes together with their either their new or their reformed council. The established coalition will come together and they will determine the rules of council. And during this conversation, two things happened, or two, really three things that I noticed. One, there was no proof that any of the council members went out and engaged their constituents to make sure that what they were deciding intersected with the wants and needs of the community. That's one. Two, what concerned me was the fact that we had an individual, the council member Cuthbert, who was really dead set on censoring the public, or as you say, our frequent flyers. And again, these again are individuals who are warriors for this city in all the best ways. They are in the loop. They hold accountability as one of the important factors
And to be
of
clear, he said you all
engagement.
are abusing the privilege. So he takes
But
this
how
as
do you abuse
abuse.
a privilege when it should be actually a right?
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
also, let's be clear, there's no other way that we can actually face to face, but more importantly, even virtually engage. You doing these type of avenues of being able to engage with community advocates and leaders. Have they even thought about reaching out to you and asking you to do something like that? So again, what I'm saying is that it's not abusing a privilege if we never have any opportunity to speak with our elected officials unless you are in the loop or you have access. And again, I like my miles. I like to consider myself a diamond medallion million miler when it comes to engaging council. And I like to, redeem my points and my miles whenever I can, because again, with council meetings being at noon during the day, at the most inconvenient time. I mean, who wants to spend their entire lunch meeting listen? Well, you would spend your entire day listening to a council meeting, but who would want to leverage 30 minutes or even an hour listening to the indecisiveness of council, right? Or the unpreparedness of our members. So especially when it comes to important items that impact our daily lives. So again, that's number two, right? Like that type of attack that we're getting on citizens who just only want to make sure that they're representing their other neighbors in the city and business owners. And the fact that he tried to censor that is concerning. And the fact that nobody,
Oh,
we
very
had
much so.
and we had two council members, thankfully, who addressed the need for the public to speak. But let me be clear and kind of recircle on number three is that I feel like the only reason we consistently now see that engagement is only because of the reality that the people's voices during the election cycle really put some fire to the ass. I'm sorry to curse, but it really did show them
I
that
believe
they are
so.
vulnerable. So it forces them now to be more engaged, more talkative, and more focused and interested on the conversations that take place during our council meetings.
I believe so. And thank you for using up all of your frequent flyer
I mean, look,
miles, as
and
he called us.
we have to continuously be engaged in this city. And for folks who are watching this, I can't stress it enough. I don't care if you need to have me, or any other, the million milers who engage in city government during these meeting opportunities. If you need us to text you and tell you, hey, it's time for public comment, you should be commenting. I mean, even if it's something for good, we should still be engaging and leveraging that right, because if we don't use it, it can easily be taken away. Although it's constitutionally wrong, and it's illegal, we have seen illegal things happen in our city that folks get away with. And so we have to be clear on the fact that they can get away with those things mean that they can get away with trying to limit our ability to provide constructive, blunt sometimes, but honest, opinionated feedback to our elected officials.
Yes, and I see Michelle Rose commenting, as she had said that if they feel that they're being abused by the same so many people, then she just said it for me. We need more people to talk at the city council meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I was just getting that out.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that again,
and our meetings are not if they think this is abuse. I mean, look at other city councils. I mean, this is really quite tame, quite mild and quite tame compared to other cities. The 30 minutes that they get of 10 people speaking for 3 minutes, and just a few comments after maybe 3 or 4 agenda items that, again, they don't have to respond to. So it's not like there's anything combative there.
Right.
I think Detroit public school system, the police carry people out of there, or used to carry people out of there. This is really not.
Their council meetings, I mean, Flint, when they had their entire water crisis going on. I mean, we talked about on the pre-show, we talked about how DC people used to throw hands. I mean, so again, this is my thing. If you can't take words, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. There are young people and engaged people that want to be engaged and focused on the constituents of this city. Yeah. Just retire. It's okay. Just if you can't take the words, it's all right, councilman. If you can't take the words, go about your business.
It's just part of the job. It's just something that I can't personally comprehend. I mean, and even look at the organizational meeting. We're talking about moving the council meeting up from what used to be, I believe, 6:30, I think. What it used to be 6:37.
6 or 6:30, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, and now moving it up to, 4 or 5-ish, just because of the fact that, they have a long day and, they're tired and people are a little more refreshed. Well, our meetings are, and they were talking about, they're 4 and 5 hours. I was watching Chicago's city council meeting the other day, and I said, why is it that Chicago has however many residents that they have? Their meeting is 4 hours. Why does ours have to go on for 5?
Do you want the honest answer to that?
You can tell
Okay,
me.
I'll be honest. So the reason why we have 12-hour meetings is simply because of the fact that our council members don't read their agenda items. They don't use their agenda as a worksheet in terms of listing your questions, doing your research. And that what happens is when an issue is brought up, people don't pay attention and they try to cram for an exam when you should have been spending
in front of everyone. Yes, it's very obvious. I remember when that first occurred to me that I said, they didn't read any of this. You have no idea what's on here, and you keep coming back to this meeting and asking questions about this exact same item that was on here, like a housing project that Councilmember Myers proposed that I won't forget. It came up for like 5 or 6 months, and they kept asking, "What is this?" to define what type of project this is, and I said, "I don't understand. I can answer this question."
But I think also another issue that we have that cause our meetings to go longer. I mean, even the rules of council meeting that were supposed to be about establishing rules, they could never make an agreement on anything. They could never get to a point where they're saying, okay, are we going to vote on this, yes or no? Or, hey, are we going to make a decision on this, yes or no? So it's always stuff left in air.
Tell me this. I know that a significant amount of that meeting was discussing what would go into working meetings. And they were debating about whether this should be in there, whether it shouldn't be in there. And at one point it was determined, I think the city attorney stepped in and said that, well, because we don't have a clear definition of what the working meeting is, that's the reason why people are confused. And the city manager said, well, I'll prepare a full definition of what this meeting is so that we'll be prepared for it the next time. But you just spent like half of this meeting arguing, about putting something in a meeting that you don't even know the purpose of the meeting?
I mean, I'm just saying, I think that I love elections. I love democracy. I do, but I think
disorganized organizational
I think it really comes down to, again, one, and I hate to be so blunt, but as an advocate, as somebody who's on the ground doing the work, I could be blunt. You get what you vote for, and again, it showed in the beginning of the year when it came to just establishing rules of council, but it also showed when it came to a council member, the same council member we talk about when it comes to wanting to censor the public, when it came to them stepping outside of their scope and trying to go after assets that are under the supervision of school board.
Oh yes, that was very that was very interesting. Yes, let's talk about it.
I mean, I think the city of Petersburg has been on fire all week, and I mean, I'm not talking literally. I'm talking about when we have to continuously have drama. I mean, we don't even need a Times Magazine mention is not even the icing on the cake. I mean, Tuesday's meeting was a cherry on top. I mean, we had the build up to this this battle between school board and the city, but more importantly,
and first I'll add that this was a joint city council school board meeting, something of which Councilmember Truscott Smith had said that she's been wanting to have for years.
Yeah.
Years she's been asking for this. And this also came from previously, remember there was a moment where several acres of land, 15, 40 acres and a mule, whatever it was that she just found in reading the school board minutes that, oh, this was given to the governor's school. And no one knew about it. And then there was stuttering going on. I said, wait a minute, this is a first. So yes, they had not previously come together. They finally decided to come together here.
Yeah.
And the meeting began by interrogating Councilmember Cuthbert and asking why is it that he's trying to wrangle the Pittman building, the school building that was used for vocational training, that are trying to expand the vocational program, why he wants to give this to the governor's school. And the fact that after laying out this fully impressive program that the superintendent had, that everyone thought was amazing,
yes,
he's the only one sitting there poking holes into it, and no one's understanding what is the purpose. And I said that he needed to register as a foreign agent because he was clearly not acting on behalf of the council. But sir, what are you doing? I said that I fully expected the way that he was just so adamantly pushing for the governor's school, asking, saying, well, what if, and did we think to plan for their expansion in the building? And the school board chair said, well, if they wanted something, I would think that they would come to us.
And not even the superintendent directly.
Right, or you wouldn't have to be doing their bidding, is the other thing. Right. They would come to us. You shouldn't be the one that's doing it. And since when does a landlord literally build out infrastructure for their tenants to expand? When does that ever happen?
And I think this is a very interesting conversation because it's like a mixed bag. You never know what you're gonna get. I don't know if you recall one of the last city council meetings that we had where they were reviewing the budget, and Councilwoman Treska Wilson Smith, who's again one of the only, if not the only, council member who actually sits down and utilizes that agenda and its items like it's a actual live working document,
clearly
discovered that there was funding or budgetary discrepancies that were not just $10. They were actual discrepancies that we were paying or budgeting to pay out to someone where they didn't necessarily need it based off of the arrangement of that building, of that tenant. And
that's right.
It shouldn't have been there. And so we see.
Yes, and she pointed out that there were I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars or something for maintenance of a building when they found out that, well, maintenance was included in the lease of the building. So what is that line item for?
Right.
So that's very concerning. And how many buildings across the city is that happening in?
that we're not either owning it or we have a clear contract that says that we are not in charge of the maintenance upkeep, but yet we're paying into that. So again, if she noticed that, and you have council members who specialize in finance and budget, you have council members who basically are in positions of responsibility of knowing what's happening, and the most vocal critic who likes to step outside their scope can't even keep their own house in order. Why are you in school board's business? I mean, you need to be focused on addressing the financial issues of our city. I mean, y'all can barely upgrade our billings and collections IT systems. You can barely be in a position to make sure we have parks and recreation funded, but then we have all this money that's sitting on budgetary lines that have no business being there. And I'm sorry, but a good catch doesn't catch it. I mean, it doesn't cut it at all. I mean, just saying, oh, got that. Oh, good for us. No, it's not cute. I mean, this is the people's money.
And just to clarify, for one, what the superintendent laid out as far as the program, was great. And Transka interjected a couple times, and she did ask, that even though that what she's saying, all of this sounds good and this is a great idea, I just want to be clear, or I would like to ask, is it the council's job to suggest or to supervise how the school board operates? Well, before you answer, I'll do it. No, it isn't. And that was, again, to address Councilmember Cuthbert, who has been hovering over them and criticizing them left and right over what they were doing, including the fact or berating the superintendent and saying, well, this program is nice, but did you consider allowing the governor's school to expand? Why didn't you do that? It seems so you didn't consider any other options. And I said, well, why are you even asking this question?
Well, and again, something that we talked about in the pre-show.
And that was just to point out that's not your role. It's something that I've heard the former mayor Florence Farley mention in the past, and yet he's the only one who has been hovering over them and trying to give them direction.
Well, and I think the biggest
not in their scope. I understand, wanting to hear what your money is going towards, but again, in this particular case, this was a very good presentation. They were receiving something close to $1 million in various grants, including a representative from the organization that helped bail the school system out. They were literally only able to pay for utilities on alternating months, as of just a couple of years ago. And now they're able to, have an ambulatory room and things of that nature. But, there he's stepping out of his scope and trying to do his real estate bidding.
Right. And I think, and I just want to be clear that Dr. Petrie Martin has been outstanding. I can tell you that I prefer Petersburg City Public School presentations over any council presentation every day, every opportunity. The graphics, the leverage of placing information there and actual scientific evidence is amazing. It speaks volumes to the time and effort that's put into the presentation.
Other resources I'll add as well.
Exactly.
All of the other partnering organizations.
Exactly.
That you mentioned, we need to have a lot more of that around here.
And I think the thing is, one of the things that I noticed last year, the Planning Commission had community conversations surrounding the comprehensive vision and plan for our city for years to come. At every single meeting, we had no council member participate. We had minimal public engagement. I could say that because as a frequent flyer of those meetings, I was there almost, at every opportunity. But again, we had no opportunity to even see council's interest in the future of the city. If you are invested in our future, you should be showing up to the table at every opportunity to hear what your constituents are saying. gauging their interest in a particular subject matter, and even inviting them to be on one of our boards or commissions. As of right now, we have a community development block grant that technically we should not be leveraging because we don't have a board that meets a quorum to be able to be a check and balance to the usage of those funds. But are we seeing those funds being expended? We are. So again, there's so many different things happening in the city that should be addressed rather than going into school board issues, because we had great candidates that were pushed or recommended or nominated to be or nominated for consideration to be on that CDBG board, and we did not see that happen. And again, when we talk about these things, these conversations aren't about trying to be negative and beat down council. It's talking about shoulda, coulda, wouldas. You should have done better, you could have done better, and you would have done better. Again, if you know that the reaction is going to be so intense and the recourse of your actions won't be just butterflies and rainbows. But when it comes to the fact that we are looking at a fact that we have a council that supervises and really manages our city. And what bothers me the most is that we have a city that has food insecurity. We have a city that has housing insecurity and homelessness. We have a city that continuously is impoverished, and the majority of its residents on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, where the median income is only 30-something thousand dollars, but you have a city manager that makes triple the amount, right? Rather than addressing those systemic issues to be able to bring our city up, be our brothers and sisters keeper, we are in a position where we are just trying to be involved with school board. And it is my recommendation based, and again, I'm nobody but a community worker with my boots to the ground, just trying to make a difference in my community. But if in 2016, city council can go after a councilwoman, Wilson Smith, for for trying to represent her constituents to the best of her ability, with allegations of ethical and criminal misconduct. Why is Councilman Charlie Cuthbert, not being investigated, not being censored, but more importantly, being called out for this ethical breach, but more importantly, the breach of his scope? I think that is the problem. And if we don't see it this next city council meeting, council holding him accountable for his actions, which again, just surprise me, council. Look, I'm looking right at this camera. Council, surprise me. You cannot create circumstances where you basically allow for a councilwoman to have to lawyer up and defend her actions and herself. And you make allegations towards her conduct. And again, you won't do the same for a council member right now who is engaging in unethical, but more importantly, attempts to mitigate and navigate a system that he has nothing to do with, and especially knowing damn well if a school board member went and talked to the city manager about an issue, there would be an uproar, because we already see uproars and conflict right now by just a council member going into their own ward to address a specific issue, or even responding to a constituent that's not in their ward. So again, I cannot stress this enough. We should see an investigation on this conduct, but most importantly, we should be seeing censure. Did you lose me?
For a second, I'm sorry. Lost you right after you said again about people who are getting into trouble by trying to do things in other people's wards.
Well, yeah. So we see right now, we've seen it historically, council members getting upset at one another because someone goes into their ward to address an issue, or you have a council member who is responding or addressing constituent needs. And so what's happening is that there's a turf war, a beef, right, about it. So again, if we can't address the fact that you had a council member that went outside their scope, went outside their role and their responsibilities, and we can't hold that conduct accountable in way of investigation and censure, we have to look at this impartially. Because if you went after Councilwoman Wilson Smith, who throughout her tenure has been working to truly do what's best for her constituents in this city. But even though her actions may have been innocent, this was not innocent. This was truly intentional. And we have to hold our council member responsible. If you go out and you run a light, you're going to be held accountable. If you go out and you break the law, or you do something that's ethically challenging, someone's going to call you out. It should be happening on council on Tuesday.
And I mean, this was very blatant. His behavior had just angered everyone. Multiple members of the council, multiple members of the school board were all saying they did not understand where Charlie Cuthbert was coming from and why he constantly was pushing for this other school, and just why was he being combative? What was the reason? So, and for those who haven't seen it, this was inside of the Progress Index. We have a new reporter, a new social justice reporter whose name I don't know, but this was her first piece, I believe.
It was
covering this, and the premise of the meeting, I believe, was about the usage of the Pittman building, again because the council member Cuthbert was trying to, claw it from the school board for some selfish purposes. So all of this was the entire 2-hour meeting was essentially about him. It began with him being condemned.
Well, and I think, and again, I am just thankful that we have a chairman of the school board that is not going to put up with that, but more importantly, that is not afraid to call out BS. Let's just be clear. But more importantly, I'm happy that we have a system where we have a school board that won't be disrespected because the school board is doing some great work. And again, for me, I don't want to see council having any say in turn or even pushback in terms of what school boarding is doing until we begin to see better schools, upgraded technology. During those planning commission meetings, I don't know if many of you watching or will watch are aware, but Dr. Petrie Martin did a presentation, and what I took away from that very clearly is that the school board needs money for capital improvement projects to improve the state of our schools because they are grossly outdated. They need to be
$20 million
modernized.
was the number I recall hearing before.
But think about it.
And the last time that it was mentioned, when it was Cuthbert again, who was questioning this number and wondering if they were just trying to, stuff money over into the side, he essentially called her a crook to her face a few months ago. She basically said that if anyone had any question about this amount, they're welcome to take a tour of any of the schools, which essentially says that they have not set foot inside of these buildings, because otherwise they probably would know that 20 million is needed.
And I think what it comes down to, I really think it comes down to, again, being a council member who is in the loop and knows what the hell is going on in their city. Absolutely. And it just speaks volumes to have council members who don't even know the state of their schools, that you can't even note the last time they've been in all of the public schools, but yet dictate the budgetary allocation or monetary allocations to their major capital projects and programs. And, one of the things that, for instance, I walked away with from that meeting with Dr. Petrie Martin that she had with the community is that, did you know just the maintenance of those Wi-Fi mobile hotspots are extraordinary? I think they're like in like $1,000 per hotspot.
I heard you mention that number before, which that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
But can you imagine if we just resolve that by utilizing COVID-19 money, which we still haven't fully leveraged, to just create free broadband for our city? Can you imagine how much money and how much savings that would create so that we would quit paying? We're paying a corporation right now to keep hotspots going where there's no contingency plan if they go out. However, we could be having broadband for all. So everybody has a opportunity to have fair and equal access to learning. Most importantly, have access to jobs, the news, information that's being disseminated by the city. Again, Not everybody has a cell phone. Not everybody has self-service. So again, we should be working to create solutions for our council. And again, until we address the needs of the city, before council. Now, if council had nothing to do, if our economy was if our city was a utopia, our economy was sound, we had business and opportunity, we were flourishing as a city, and let's say we needed a building for growth or expansion, I would be annoyed, but I maybe would be able to understand the move. However, when there's so many issues on the city operations side that need to be addressed, stay in your kitchen. Stay in your kitchen, stay in your stove.
I'll add to the point of the universal Wi-Fi, because I know that there are people who might eye roll and say that that is unnecessary. There's no reason to spend money on something like that. The way that I understand that works, these are like sensors that are placed on various lampposts across the city.
Right.
I mentioned it when I first came here. One of the first things that I did was to set up a meeting with the gunshot detection program ShotSpotter, and that is how it works. When gunshots go off, instead of dispatching police to whoever makes the phone call to 911, the police are dispatched to wherever the sound of the gunshot is, and the sensor in this. It's detected by sensors on lampposts. And so the same sensor that's used for universal internet would be the same used for ShotSpotter. So there's multiple uses for it.
Yeah, and I think even if we leverage that type of Wi-Fi, or that broadband, excuse me,
saving money by taking out two birds with one stone.
Yeah, and again, you're creating the word of the year, which is equity, where we're having additional opportunities for people to still be connected. And, again, there's so many issues in this city. There's so much need for transparency. And until we get there, we should be holding our council members accountable. They should be keeping each other accountable. But more importantly, we should be addressing the issues at hand with our city and not going into the scopes of other areas that aren't a priority. Is that annex, is that building a priority for the growth of our city, or is it just only for selfish gain and opportunity?
So I'll say this. I can be wrong, but the annex that you're talking about is the auditorium that's going to be added to the public library, correct?
I don't know. I'm confused.
No, you mentioned an annex.
You mean that annex? And see, this is okay.
So I don't know if you were talking about another one or not.
Well, I'll talk about that one. So, and this is another issue of mismanagement of finances in the middle of a pandemic. When their election cycle was going on and they created this first push for a library, I love the library. I leverage it. But this is the thing. In times of crises, and our city is going through a syndemic, we have multiple issues that we need to address. We have high unemployment, terrible health outcomes. We have an economy that needs to be revitalized. We have communities that need to be revitalized. And a priority at one point was to fund city money to help meet the financial need to be able to start this project on this annex of the library. So they came back after many people had pushed back, and they said, it's not cost effective. We are not going to do it. And guess what? Meetings later, all of a sudden, there is just money in the general fund to create, to be able to contribute to this project. Now, I'm going to just make two comparisons. You see bones up on that annex. You see construction crews out there working. Meanwhile, how many groundbreaking ceremonies did you see that the city, it's on its own, was investing in that project that has started already? Zero.
Now, I wanted to mention that I thought I could have sworn that I heard that no public money was going into that annex.
I mean, if anybody's watching, correct me if I'm wrong.
Once I heard it. But people say things that aren't correct all the time.
And I may say something that's not correct. And if I apologize if I was incorrect with that. But I was under the impression that the city had produced money for that expansion. If not, I apologize. But again, if that's the case,
I was wondering, based on the same thing that you're saying, as far as whether or not that this is a priority. I'd heard that they had just I think that the Library Foundation was able to raise all of this private money, and that was that. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this was that's impressive. And this was during one of the meetings that had a presentation of the library, or a presentation of some of the blueprints of the auditorium. I think I tweeted some, whatever. We can go back and find the date. But just like that was what I thought, because otherwise I would say the exact same thing. That's not what
But
I would see as a priority for spending public dollars.
but it also leads to the assertion that if the money could have been found without public dollars, why was it ever brought up at all? If this was the case, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying. The city. Why is the city forced so many times to contribute when there's so many other issues that need to be addressed? Again, our literacy levels of our youth need to be addressed. We can have a beautiful library, but if none of our children can read, what's the purpose of the structure being there? What's the purpose of a children's section for adults to read to grown adults who can't read at a fourth grade level, outside of a fourth grade level? So again, what I'm saying is that we have to address the systemic root of our problems and not just build up nice. I want to see more literacy programs. I want to see more mentorship opportunities for high school students to read and help mentor younger children in primary levels or in elementary levels to be in a position where they can feel more comfortable reading out loud. And again, we can talk all night about this, but again, we have to really sit down as a city and with residents included and have a prioritization exercise where we really prioritize future initiatives. I mean, I know a couple of years ago, they sent out an email asking folks what the priority was, but the reality is not everybody checks your email every day. Not everybody has access to email. It's not the best way to reach people, even as an adult that works a 9-to-5 job. I prioritize texting or calling me or walking into my office. So again, we have to look at ways to really be equitable about our surveying and how we engage people and solicit feedback.
Yes, something that I had mentioned in the pre-show regarding engaging the community. In my time in municipal government, we, on top of having our online surveys, we had a community engagement department, something I spoke with the city's communications person here, and they went outside on foot. And for a whole week, they were knocking on doors and they took surveys that way. I'd also mentioned other things in regards to like the billings and collections department. The technology thing is that's a whole nother story. But to have lines of people all the way out the door trying to pay their bills, but so many people are calling in constantly about everything. People are leaving messages with council members. We hear about this month after month. People aren't able to get in, so they opened up a customer service center. And I'm told that it's starting as a customer service, sort of as a call center, and it will expand into more, customer engagement. But to prevent having to hire God knows how many people that are in there, probably 10, I think, something like that I heard, who are taking calls all day, which I just think is insane. You can laminate flyers around the city in public buildings, parks, to display that you have an app and to show people that they can report things on their own to help alleviate some of these services. That may seem like it's common sense because we see it all the time, but not going to. I don't want to say common sense and all that common,
But I'll say
but
this,
it does. Hey, we're all in this together. I'm just sharing some tips. The same thing for the pandemic as well. I heard that there has been some disinformation of people who just weren't clear on where to go for vaccines. I'm hearing about calls floating around to various health services in the city where they shouldn't be, asking about vaccines and just COVID testing. The same thing can go for that as well, to actually put the information up publicly. And let's not forget, the COVID money is literally in their 3 categories, one of them being marketing. That is what it is for. And
right?
then maybe you'll have less people who are complaining, angry because they can't reach anyone. Maybe they're walking down the street and they'll actually see, voila, the directions on how to get a COVID test or put it in the mail. I think that Hopewell um, mailed a lot of. I think they mailed some instructions. I know that.
But it's
Go ahead.
there. The money is there. We have the COVID funds. I think again, one of the greatest ways to properly use federal grant money is to identify the need. You don't identify the need until you get out in the community and ask.
And
You
we're
don't
not a
get out.
technically advanced area, for our
No, it doesn't. It's
population.
not rocket science.
So we do need to have more, um, you know, more things that are printed and put in the mail, and to have television advertisements. I've been seeing several television ads about Hopewell being open,
And
mind
that's
you.
the thing. We're not leveraging the money. I think that also there has to be some accountability for that. Especially, I think now more than ever, people want information. People want information about
Do you remember that
vaccination.
we
Mhm.
hired I believe that he was paid, I think that he's being paid, a fellow. And I don't remember what school that he came from. It was very impressive, I recall.
Yeah, yeah.
And his job was specifically, and he gave a very impressive presentation on how we were to spend COVID money. And
Yes.
I just wonder where he is, because I feel that a lot of this, these would be things that he would be suggesting. And he hasn't presented again. So something tells me he's not
Well,
around
he's
anymore.
he's tied up in bureaucracy probably. And I could tell you that at the end of the day, council is responsible for appropriating the money, but more importantly, having the ability to have a finger on the pulse of the community and know where that money should go. I think that when it comes down to it, when we're looking at appropriation of COVID money, now is a time to be looking and seeing that there's more that we can be doing. I think that right now, council members, even if we look at not even talking about the money, we could be having council members disseminating information via social media, disseminating information through their social networks that hopefully are bringing in everybody into the picture. I think that again, and now if you even leverage COVID money, what we could be doing with that is astronomical. It could be cost effective. Facebook advertising, Twitter advertising, Instagram advertisement is not expensive. And
And
guess what?
I wanted to ask a question that
Yeah.
someone, a candidate for office here, that's asking, Kim Taylor, who is asking, and she's running for delegate, asking who's distributing the grant money. Now, I believe that the purpose of that fellow that I mentioned, he was supposed to be, I think, the contact for who was going to be managing the COVID funds and helping with the allocation. I actually am not sure of who our. I don't think we have a contact person.
I will stand by and
We
see
were
if
talking about having. I specifically remember we were talking about having a quote unquote COVID manager. That was being discussed here, and I don't think that one was ever identified, because it's a lot of money. There is a lot to be spent, but yeah, I don't think that we
well,
have a point of
especially I think
contact.
especially when you're looking at the common denominator in our system, in our city, and more specifically the government, is lack of dissemination of information. Maybe Michelle knows it. I know she's in the chat. But again, there is not enough consistent information for us to be able to say, oh, we have a manager, that's who it is. And guess what, we're individuals that pretty much know what's going on. We stay pretty much ear to the ground in terms of what's happening in our city. So the fact
And
that
I have to add, I have an idea of who might be possibly to blame here. The city manager addressed something similar to this as it pertained to grants. She said
mm,
before that there are some people who think that everything can be solved with a grant. And just throwing a name out there, what came to mind was who ran for council in Ward 4. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name.
oh, and Ford Marcus Squires.
Yes, yes. Just because he mentions a lot of grants, nothing
Hmm.
negative, but just saying that because he's always suggesting grants. He said that the problem is that we need to have a grants manager, so that we're not getting this money and there's no one accountable for any of it. And so she knows our tendency for probably, misspending and having to pay some of the money back in the end. And so knowing that, that's why she was trying to be proactive, I think, in getting this fellow. And I think that it could be the council who might have said, oh, we don't need him. We don't need to make that expenditure to have a manager. So I just wanted to point out that could be what happened. I think that she could have been proactive in trying to have a manager,
Could
and
have.
they said no.
But again, I think that again,
Just
this
show,
is
just to, because I had a phone call and someone was asking me to identify who is the problem around here, and I
I
just
don't
wanted
know.
to put a
And
pin in
that's
that and say I think that they could be the problem there.
I wish that we had more information on that. I think that where we stand now, there's no time like the present. Let's start bringing in grant managers. Let's start prioritizing our funding for grant managers. But more importantly, if you want to be cost effective, I'm telling you, leverage your community assets. You have nonprofits that could be helping you. Staying on top of those grants and their expenditures and those grant reports. Again, I'm just saying that, and I think Michelle's saying Darnetta Tyus is the COVID guru. Maybe that's who's in charge of the money. But again, it comes down to one, accountability, but more importantly, leveraging the internal and external stakeholders of the city to help us be in a position to, more importantly, address the need. And there's no need like addressing COVID, and we have money for that. And so it's really frustrating that we don't even know who is responsible for the money. Again, if you go to the old meetings and you're looking at the worksheet for funding allocation and distribution, it's outdated, or it looks like nothing has been spent, but money has been appropriated.
You're
So
right.
again, the fact that we don't have the information, which I think what I can't remember that site that we used to have, but I think it's OpenGov. Was that site that we had where you could go on and see how money was spent live. You could see it. We had a subscription to that. The subscription lapsed. Guess what? There has been no
In
effort.
Petersburg?
Yes.
Okay.
If you go on the website, Petersburg, if you go to the Petersburg website, there is an area where the old OpenGov link used to be. If you go there and you attempt to access OpenGov, you cannot access it anymore. We do not have the subscription. So that's how you kept track of allocation of money and how much you had in a particular fund and whatnot. So that transparency piece is gone. And I'm telling you, and it's funny because, and what's interesting about, we've had multiple conversations about this, what's so interesting about municipal government, and it doesn't matter if you were a complete progressive liberal on the left or if you are super conservative on the right. I think there is a middle ground to come to a space where you want transparency, you want accountability, you want representatives who are going to
People
represent
really
you,
want
but
a
most
lot of the
importantly,
same things in municipal government.
mm-hmm. And I think it's really cool that you can have ideologies that are different sit at the same table and agree to that. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of how our partisan government should operate, but more importantly, why even though many of us may not be on the same page when it comes to identity politics, we still have to come together and to make sure our communities or our cities, our neighbors are getting the support, but most importantly, that accountability that's needed.
No,
I
absolutely.
can't stress it enough. But the thing is, especially with COVID, we're looking right now with lack of equity, a lack of systems. Can you imagine if we were able to utilize COVID-19 money to help increase staffing to answer the phones right now, even if we use a temp agency, respond to emails, expand opportunity for not necessarily vaccination, but at least a pre-registration or waiting list system that's not just a form. Again, there's so many things that we can be leveraging that money for, and I
I
can't
will
get too.
I will say that the customer service center that I mentioned, they're actually doing technically just that, as far as having some temps who are answering the phone at the moment.
But see, and
So
this is the thing. While that's great, again, we should be leveraging our customer service center to support that operation. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, but I think again, it's about how do we get information to people? If that means we got to do mailings of a book of if
mhm.
hey, if you got this problem, go to page 2, section A. are
I
creating an
agree.
app, a city app, that the City of Petersburg app that has that information. Again, not every you can give something to somebody which is going to be in their wheelhouse, something that they're going to leverage. For our elders who may not have smartphones, or maybe for a millennial who just doesn't like a mobile device, you can leverage a book. For those who prefer to talk on the phone, you can leverage the call center. But again, until we utilize the funds that we have, the resource the resources in terms of community that we have right here who are willing to help get on the ground and distribute that information, we are still going to be a low information city.
And I will add that as they were originally, when COVID had first started and the categories for the COVID allocations were being created, both the contact tracing, COVID testing, and the communication part, communication being, the mailings, putting things on the side of buses, which I heard was being done. I haven't seen them. I don't know if you have. Um,
No.
but I remember a few council members, I specifically remember Cuthbert and Howard Meyer saying that that wasn't necessary to
Oh
scratch
no,
it
we
out.
don't we don't need to. Businesses
And the city
businesses
manager
can
said, well, wait,
fundraise.
she
They
said,
can
wait a minute.
raise their money for that.
Yeah, she said, wait a minute, I'm going to add some more information to this. I think that it's necessary and we will revisit this later. Obviously, getting information out and educating the public on what to do to get through this pandemic, so that we're not on Time Magazine's list of hotspots in the nation, is kind of necessary.
Yeah, and that's what that's one of the things our campaign did, especially when that business funding was going around. We were letting, hey, your election, especially in 1, 3, 5, and 7, we were letting folks know, hey, your election is right around the corner. Anybody come and talk to you about this plan? Because they said they went to every business. No. Okay. Did you know that they don't want to use CARES money to help your business advertise? That here's the transcript of the conversation that they said businesses can use their own money to advertise. Again, this is so difficult for a small business in the middle of a pandemic to make the decision of, do I advertise to try to try to
Now,
increase
who
my
said
cash
that?
flow?
Who said that the businesses could use their own money?
Uh, Councilman Myers and I think Councilman Cuthbert both agreed to that. And so what that creates is kind of a tragic situation in which business owners now have to make that decision. Do they advertise in hopes that they can increase their cash flow, or do they hold back on that to be to be able to keep their employees employed so they can have a paycheck? Again, all of this impacts our economy, and so we have to be focused right now more than ever on working families. We cannot lose focus in that. We cannot lose our councilmen's and women's advocacy behind that, because again, they are the core of our economy. And guess what? It's so much easier now to provide safety nets and support systems for them right now to keep them afloat than try to bring them back from an anchor attached to their ankle. That's
Right.
so much more comprehensive in terms to address, when we can just utilize preventative methods to address and meet the need now. As a city, we don't need a state to do that. We can do that with COVID money. We can do that by leveraging our city resources to be able to help promote businesses. I don't give a damn if it's you create an allowance in the code to allow them to put stand up signs on the roads or on. I mean, I don't know, but we have to come together as a community and begin these necessary conversations and how we can support small business.
No, absolutely, I agree. I mean, how you're asking people to use your own money in marketing, while we're at the same time giving businesses extra money to stay afloat. That makes absolutely sense.
Yeah, and again, and this is and this leads, and then I know this has led this frustration and this kind of disagreement has led into multiple arguments. And again, when we see our council members act so selfish, it creates a situation where we even question if this system of government is even working, if we need to change our ward system into an at-large system. So it creates a more complex argument that can be simplified by just addressing the need for the constituent every time.
Yes, and to work harder and getting the people out who are not doing it. the next time around. I've, this ward system argument keeps coming up. You know how I feel about it.
But so
I,
and I again, it's a solid argument. I trust me, I get it. I mean, and I've had multiple community leaders reach out to me and ask me for my opinion on the ward system. Again, I feel like the ward system only works as good as the individual representing their constituent, and how willing they are to go out and advocate for their constituent. Again, one of my fears of an at-large system, which means that every election cycle, it's a no holds, a battle royale of just multiple candidates, and the top candidates get selected to be your next council members. What happens if you get 7 Charlie Cuthberts? What happens if you get 7 Mayor Parhams or Councilman Parham? What happens if you get 7 John Harts, 7 Annette Smith Lees? What happens if you get 7 Tresca Wilson Smiths? Again, it may be good on one side of the sword, but it's double-edged. It's going to hurt either way. You're going to have a truly conservative bloc with no compromise, or you're going to have a truly progressive bloc that obviously may benefit, but also there's some repercussions for that may affect who lives there. On either end of the spectrum, there has to be balance. You have to have a yin with the yang.
I'm going to answer Michelle Merles, who asked, what is the point of having a ward system if we have a council member who does not even live in Petersburg? My answer is that the community needs to rally and get him or her, the hell out. I mean, seriously, like how one of our council members was reelected by 3 votes, and, nothing against him. But when I came here, the way that people were articulating complaints to me, as if this were life and death, and just how horrible the conditions were in the city, I said I expected to see lines of people marching up and down the street to try and get rid of this guy. So the fact that he was reelected by just a couple of votes, I said was ridiculous, because this is not, the outcome does not match the energy that you all were giving me. If they're that bad, then you just have to work harder to get rid of them. And so in this case, I mean, I think that we can physically see that there are some people who are a bit shaken after this election. I don't know if you remember, Councilmember Myers said that after after the meeting where you went on a tangent, and he said this was the nastiest election I've witnessed in the last 9
I'm a nasty man, I mean.
And not saying that he was shaken or anything. That was just just a point of reference. But they're noticing that people are stepping up, and so they're acting accordingly. And so that energy just has to continue. This is how elections work. So I understand those who feel like things are just not working, but that just means that you have to work harder. And just to repeat, sorry for like 12th time, first on here, I know others have heard my ward system arguments. I've just said that, for instance, if I could represent a developer and say that I can help you get rid of the poorest out of town. I can give you this whole 7th of the city. We're just going to vote to get rid of the ward system. They'll have no representative, so no one's going to fight back anyway. And boom, that's an easy way to go. Take a bulldozer to that part of town. Representation.
But I think if we honestly, this is the issue. I'm just going to be just brutally honest. Petersburg comes across and is a city that has a majority of low information voters. And I'm not saying that because it's disrespectful. I think because throughout my entire knowledge of Petersburg, and really when it comes down to what I hear from our elders who have so much knowledge, is that you never had a city that is transparent, engaging, conversational at the most, but more importantly, focused on the constituency.
Well, that matters. Yes, it's hard to be a high information voter. If you can't get to information. Then I just mentioned that I had a 4-hour conversation with someone about the city the other day. I have all of these extended conversations just because that's the only way I'm ever going to learn what's going on. I said that's the only reason why I sit and take notes throughout all of these council meetings and now boards and commission meetings, because there's no other way that I will find out what's going on. I'm happy to learn, but
But
again,
you
we're
have
not
something
the
that will
most
happen in a board or
transparent.
commission meeting that no council member is aware of because they don't even engage in the process. Again, they didn't engage in the planning commission comprehensive plan project that they had with the community.
And I will
Many
add that comprehensive plan, that strategic and comprehensive plans are literally that's the basis that you govern on. And
right.
you're not even supposed to you're not supposed to do any legislating on anything that's outside of either of those documents. So to not take part in the planning of those as a legislator makes no sense.
Yeah.
And surely enough, as time goes by, you could you could go through plenty of ordinances and whatnot, and you could call in and tell them this is out of the strategic plan. This is
Yeah.
outside of the strategic plan. If you never read it or took any part in creating it, you would never know. And
But I
this
think
is
also an
how
important factor
we
of
have an
that is
unorganized government.
if you were in that that space where you heard your community address an issue by let's say they want more green space, they want more better improved and modernized schools, let's say heck you even want a no leash policy for dogs that are tied outside. Let's just go that broad, right? And then you see
Mhm.
ordinance that are initiatives to push a comprehensive plan that goes against what the people wanted. You would think council would go, yeah, but that's not what the people said. Let's stick with what people want because they showed up, they took time out of their day to engage. They are not sharing those recorded sessions with them because again, you would hear it back. You would hear knowledge of that taking place. Um, I can't stress it enough. Again,
And I just
this
tell
is
people that if you want to know the future of the city that you live in, then you could look at the strategic plan. That is the document that writes out the vision that the leaders have over the next 5 years.
But the issue with
And
the
so,
setup of
so
our city website is you can't even organically access that information. So early on, when you go to look into a city that you may be interested in moving in, but wanted to know what their focus is as a city, you can't even with ease access that. In an emergency, if you have a hurricane, if you're a nonprofit and there's a hurricane or a natural disaster, like we have a snowstorm approaching the city, or inclement weather approaching our city by Sunday, if you lack a publicly available emergency action plan that you renew on a yearly or interval basis, where you engage the public and community leaders to be a part of. Now, when you have inclement weather inbound, and you're like, what is my role in this process? What is my role as let's say, as a HIV service organization that provides health services to the community? Where do I sit at in this emergency action plan? You can't even access it. You can't find it. I Googled it. You can find it with ease anywhere else. Where do you sit as a community or as an organization, like an NAACP or like even a political party? How can we come together to meet the need of the city or meet the vision? Right? You can't access, you can't find it. So how do you know where you fit in? It's like
I have
putting
a thought.
putting a triangle in a square.
Yes, I have a thought about the website. We have our technology issues are many. And so with it, and just as a small example of them, supposedly I hear that the water billing is such that they're doing the billing by Excel spreadsheet, and so they put the decimal point in the wrong place, and every so often people get three, four, and $5,000 water bills. But that's another story.
JaVonni,
So, but so listen, when
JaVonni,
I hold on,
do
when
we do
I
we have to talk about the water billing?
I was talking about the technology. So in talking about these insane tech issues, that it's hard for me to suggest a solution. And I've worked in smart city implementation, and it's hard to suggest it if I don't know what the problem is. The city manager had said that the state had some type of template program that they could lease to us, but it was too expensive. For those out there, if anyone knows what the name of this is, I asked inside of our group. I don't think I got a response. I would love to know. Um, and of the excuse me, of the things that I think that funding should come from the state, one would be for our economic development office. When I came here, we had one person in that office. One would think that should be a priority of ours. Cities similar to Petersburg have issues with funding economic development, code enforcement, and technology. There's so many. Go into any different board or commission meeting and you hear a different story. They have a list of new businesses, a list of all of the registered businesses in the city that were mentioned inside of the Economic Development Authority meeting, and for December or November and December. But they said they weren't able to differentiate between which ones were reoccurring and which ones were newly registered. Then someone else asked, well, what about could you give me any more information than just the contact information? And assistant manager, city manager Taya said that they're just building the infrastructure for this, and so they don't have that. But they're essentially copying this information from the collection. What is that title? I can't think of it. Collections, tax collection. I'm talking tax collection manager, something like that.
Are you talking about who's in charge of that, like the taxes and
that title? I can't think of what that title.
Commissioner of Revenue.
Yes, Commissioner of Revenue. Sorry, the information is being copied from there. So you're also spending time in recreating something, and of course, the just pulling that information could be better. And whatever this is that we're creating from scratch here, this Fred Flintstone thing. Is it really worth saving the money so that we're not spending what the state software is? Again, I don't even know what this money is. It would help if it was mentioned during a meeting. I could have a point of reference. But those are things that I would want to see state money for. Obviously, we have tech issues, and that is just the one thing that if they could step in to be able to help fix.
But why not? Again, when we think about this, if cost was actually a barrier, again, when the city manager makes 6 digits in a city where the median income is only 30, at the most 36,000, that's where the problem lies. But again, leverage what you have. What we have is Richard Bland's college, which is connected to William and Mary, and we also have connection with career and technical education with our public school system. Why are we not leveraging those resources? Heck, even if we have to cross the bridge and go to Virginia State, why are we not leveraging them, saying, hey, why don't y'all create a software program for us? Hey, community, let's do a project where we'll give a big celebration, a parade, maybe some money, maybe we'll give you we'll help fund your business, or your help you start up, but create a software program for us. I mean, I think there's so many different ways we can address this, but what it ultimately leads to is our Commissioner of Revenue right now, Brittany Flowers, who does the best that she can, and she does produce outcome and cash flow for our city to leverage. Can you imagine what she could do if council would get their stuff together and really get to work on prioritizing the need to update our technology, right? Can you imagine the work, the efficiency that her office would have? Again, I can't stress that.
Do you remember what year this, I mentioned the last time that we spoke that I said that the city manager had brought up getting some new tech personnel. I don't remember what the title was, but for one, we're supposed to have our city council meetings live streaming on the city website by December. That's not happened. I don't think I've heard of a new date. I'm sure they're working on it. Just saying. But the last time, but prior to that, the last time any mention of anything technology-wise was mentioned was in 2017 when the city manager it came in. And I went through the city council minutes to try to find evidence of anything else. Like if there's anything that I give Charlie Cuthbert credit for, he mentioned that the city's largest projects, and there were 13 of them, they should have updates every 30 days. That seems pretty simple, but it obviously wasn't happening. So major issues, the same thing should happen. This technology, this crazy tech thing that, those watching Kim Taylor, I don't know if she's even aware of just how horribly insane
it's
that
terrible.
it is.
For water utilities,
it should be brought up every 30 days just so that people know that we're addressing this. I said this to the police chief when I said he mentioned all of the about all of the levels of crime essentially coming down. I said, well, I've never heard that. And I think the public would like to hear the same thing as well, because everyone just thinks things are just getting worse. People
But
just
that's
think it's getting worse. We don't hear anything positive. So I said, if there's something good happening, by all means mention it, or have a representative to try to come to council every month or every so often, once a quarter, to give an update, or someone on the council should give an update on crime, just so that people know that obviously one of our biggest issues here, we hear you, and this is being worked on, because optics do matter.
and that's one of the things I one of the things our campaign during the last year election cycle was really fixated on was accountability, but more importantly metrics, because you can't make actual decisions without knowing and having scientific evidence to go off of. So again, one of the things we really were pushing for were at the minimum quarterly reports from each and every department in the city to provide scope and perspective in terms of their performance. That
I
way
used to have to write those.
yeah, me
Just
too. I
saying.
mean, it's not fun, but you know what? When it comes down for you justifying
They
why
were
you
done
need
monthly,
additional,
actually.
hmm?
They were done monthly, actually. I'm just saying.
That's what I wanted. Until we got our stuff together, that's what we really needed. We needed monthly updates in terms of the operation and where she stood. And more importantly, we really needed more information to be able to justify salary increases. Appropriation of money. But I think when it comes down to it, we have and I know we have individuals who are watching like Ms. Taylor. I don't think they're aware that our water billing system, you have a truck that pulls the data from each meter. Then it goes to City Hall where somebody manually takes that information and inputs it into another system. So again, you have user errors, you have
Hold on.
problems.
Now the way that it pulled, because we haven't had this conversation on the details before. This is done wirelessly as the truck drives by, correct?
But I've lived in my house for close to a year and a half now, and nobody has ever, no one has ever checked or looked at my meter to compare the number versus what that report is saying.
And so these were talking directly to Ms. Taylor, but in 2016, the city installed smart water meters. And so this is this is my expertise. Theoretically, the purpose of a smart meter is so that no one has to do anything. Like if you have a water leak at your house, someone can get an alert in City Hall or wherever and realize, oh, there's some high number, and just cut it off.
They can't do that if
Like
they don't have the technology on the other end to get it.
There's not supposed to be anything manually done whatsoever. That's the whole purpose of a smart meter. And so they were installed incorrectly. Mm-hmm. And the public works director was fired because he never went back to check to see that the vendor did his job correctly. And so this is now what, 5 years later, and there's still people who complain about water billing. People are coming to city council meeting month after month after month, mentioning that they were having these billing issues. And every so often, someone appears in one of these Facebook groups again with these $3,000, $4,000, and $5,000 bills. But again, and I also what I also heard that occurred with this disconnect with the water billing is that apparently the physical meters are on the homes, but they never got the software to read this, which is why there's all of this manual data going around, which is completely counterproductive. I mean, I spent a significant amount of time in studying how smart water meters worked years ago. And I mean, some things just have to be prioritized. I just would like to hear, I understand that we were coming out, from the brink of financial collapse, but I would just love to hear, what was more important than getting that software and just why that never happened.
If what we were able to have paying the city manager 6 digits rather than addressing the need of having a positive cash flow where you could
look at the nonprofit who gave the school system $330 thousand, I think, to help just bring them to to a positive balance so that they can then pay for things like science labs and whatnot. Yeah. Why are you not utilizing said organizations? Just a freebie for you all. The Knight Foundation helps with said things. Um, I, I,
There's so many organizations out there that want people to have access to water, that want people to have clean water, that want people to be able to have a roof over their head, to address food insecurity. We are not leveraging the resources that are out there. We may not be, we don't necessarily have to be a city that's completely reliant on grant funding, but we should be a city that is leveraging the fact that grants are out there, leveraging the fact that there is free money out there, which means that the rest of the money that we don't have to expend from our general funds can be utilized to address the needs of working families in our city. But more specifically, it can be used to modernize and upgrade our school systems, address actual evidence-based interventions to address the influx of crime, to address the fact that we have individuals within our city that can't read above a fifth grade level, that we have individuals that may want to go back to school, that we could be assisting to connect them and link them into those particular services, addressing the increase of prevalence of HIV and syphilis and mortality of pregnant Black women in our city. I mean, there's so many different things that we can be doing to address equity and embracing diversity, but more importantly, moving the city in a direction, in a trajectory that will be positioned to be at the gate of 85 and 95, but more importantly, being a gate that's welcome and embracing and able to sustain the economic growth that we're going to be seeing, that's going to be coming down the 95 corridor, coming across from 64, but more importantly, coming up 85. It's going to happen. It's happening organically. Our real estate inventory, and our value of real estate are going up. Demand is here. We can't meet that need because we're not focused as a city on addressing our bones. Until we address our infrastructure, address our systems. If I was a business, even a small business owner, and I came here or I heard that there was issues like this going on, why would I invest in a city? And I know Councilman Hill was really annoyed at the fact that, oh, people are talking negative about the city. Well, you know what? I want Amazon to know the problems that we face so that we have time to fix our issues and our stuff before we get in a position where we have Amazon here and we risk tarnishing that relationship because we don't have our stuff together.
I mean, and just as a reminder to the public, I mean, what was the complaint that Councilmember Hill had? He said that his complaint was that there were other city council members and some city employees who were speaking negatively about the city, and then he wanted to have a conversation with the city attorney on how to do something about that. I mean, the things that we're discussing are pretty they're pretty well known. If they were addressed, we wouldn't be talking about them. That's kind of the wrong response. And he decided to go about the censorship direction based off or piggybacking off of the whole insurrection news, trying to weed out if we had anyone around here who were insurrectionist sympathizers. And while we're at it, if they're speaking negatively about the city.
But it's that type of energy that's unnecessary. We don't have to talk up drama. In the midst of Black deaths that we saw at the hands of law enforcement throughout our country, and the pushback that we saw that communities across our nation were pushing it back against multiple police departments across our country. Petersburg, I can say, especially being only 35 minutes away from Richmond, who saw protest and destruction of property. What did we see? We saw peaceful marching across our bridges. We saw peaceful assembly of people that just wanted to ensure that the police and our city understood that there was a need to address inequities in our city. The fact is that to incite that, and again, I'm as blue as day long, but as a Democrat, to leverage that situation that took place at our nation's capital, the danger that it placed our just Republican to try to leverage that to justify why we must censor our public, why we must not talk negative about the city, but more importantly, to leverage that violence that happened at our nation's capital to increase police patrols only in your neighborhoods with your houses, show the inequity and the lack of focus on everyday Petersburg residents that are working their asses off just to keep their heads above water, especially during this pandemic. And it's disrespectful.
You should elaborate on that police patrol for those who aren't aware.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are reports out there that council people are having, or are still having, or at one point were having every hour on the hour patrols around their homes.
Every 4 hours.
24. I mean, it was just consistent reporting. But
Yeah.
you posted on your social media that you had a neighbor and a resident that had violence outside their homes, and I've been very, very public about the fact that just next to this, 13 shots were fired in a home directly across the street from me at 4:45 in the morning. And again, I don't live in a neighborhood that sees this type of violence. It is very uncommon, but the fact that that happens, but yet we rarely see a patrol come around here speaks volumes when they're getting all of the attention, but they live in areas on the higher end of the socioeconomic spectrum that never see violence in this capacity, or never see, but probably even see gunshots happening down in Cool Springs. What bothers me the most is that that's where you're focusing your law enforcement efforts on. But meanwhile, we've seen 5 or 6 murders up, I would say up north, past Southwest within Washington on Hinton, on and around McKenzie, Fort Henry, within Washington, Southwest in Washington, Farmer Street. We're seeing all of that violence taking place in that area, and we don't even have a council person to step out and address the violence that's increasing in our city. But they'll throw together a community cleanup on a Saturday and go out and pick up trash for an hour, and only on the main thoroughways on within Washington, but not get into those communities that are experiencing that violence, engage with their residents in their constituency, listen to what they have to say. Again, the key word is listen to what they have to say, and take those experiences back and talk about that during our council during our council meetings.
And let's add. Let's just ask, who is going to create an insurrection in Petersburg, Virginia? Because that was supposedly what the inspiration behind them having police patrolling at their homes. One, who's going to do this in Petersburg? 2, who is going to do it at their homes? At what point has there been a threat in any of the city council members' homes? We've had multiple instances, from I understand, of where there have been sort of alleged false flags of their safety being threatened. But I don't know. I mean, it really sounds like a guilty conscience, if you ask me. If anyone is irate about something around here, I'm pretty sure they would either be going to the state capitol or city, or one of the city council meetings that we're not going to have for,
if there was a legitimate threat, we would have already seen an influx of state response to support that threat. But more importantly, again, when we talk about public engagement and communication, we would have seen additional communication warning the public that this was a possibility. The government, our municipal government put out no warnings about a possibility of insurrectionists having activities in our city. So again, why stir the pot? At the end of the day, there is dissent among council members because there is a lack of there's the serious dissatisfaction with the customer service that they're putting out, but more importantly, a lack of their ability to do their job. Again, I can't stress this enough. This is why we don't necessarily need a at-large system. It's my thought that we should have essentially like a hybrid system where we maybe have 2 or 4 at-large members who have the ability to be a check and balance on each ward council, to go into wards and be in support of or dissent decisions or actions that take place there, or lack of focus. But again, we need to really work hard as a community to come together and educate one another. Again, the incumbent may be someone you went to school with, their grandmother or mother may have taught you, but a spade's a spade. If you're not taking care of your community, if you don't know what's going
Right.
on, that should be resulting in you being aware of that, you seeing that, especially when it comes to your child's education and their educational experience, and the lack of opportunity to get into schools like Harvard, the Air Force Academy, the military, the Coast Guard Academy, the Naval Academy, VMI, the military. I'm just saying there's if we it would be a different story if every child that went through our public school system were able to graduate and go to Ivy League schools. It would be a
Right.
difference if a child could graduate as a senior and have an IT certification which guaranteed them 6 digits, easy. It would be a different situation if our life expectancy was longer and more gracious to us. It'd be a
Yeah.
difference if we didn't live next to a dump, or even more importantly, have the lack of focus on clean, accessible, but more importantly, fair water costs in our city.
That water cost that you have. What is your water series called? Is it Water
Water Wednesday.
Wednesday?
So typically on my Facebook page, Patrick Ingram for Petersburg City Council. I guess I will announce this now. It is my every intention to run in 4 years. So we're going to keep it going. We're going to keep our committee strong. And every Wednesday we try. It's hard during the midst of this pandemic, as I am a part of the public health response to COVID. But we focus on water, all things water, but more importantly, accountability, where we hold our elected officials accountable. And so I can't stress it enough. We must start doing that as a community, and we cannot be complicit. We must let our voices be heard, but we should be leveraging one another in support to address the issues that we face in Petersburg. And that's why I hope I finish it, but this weekend I should be sending out communication because I do want to start a community conversation. It is my goal to start a Petersburg community coalition to come together as a community to create a sense of belongingness, but more importantly of camaraderie, so that if we want to, for instance, have more affordable and justifiable water bills, that we can lobby the city and really be those frequent flyers to the point where we force them to make decisions, even if we have to leverage our state senators and delegates, even if we have to take our complaints to the steps of our state's capital. We will be coming together as a community to address those, but more importantly, other community issues that impact our daily lives.
Absolutely, and I'm glad to hear about you running again in 4 years and keeping that
Yeah,
momentum going.
you got me. You got me. I made my decision. I'm here. I love this city. My commitment has been solid. We've been out there still doing the work, and it didn't take an election loss to break that commitment. And it's
Right.
not easy. And my goal is to, and hopes to run it in
Tell me
four
about it.
years. But you heard it first. I will be there. I mean, again, I love the city. I have a love for Ward 6, but more importantly, I have a love for working families and transparency and accountability of our leaders.
Absolutely. Um, Even though I was sort of following your lead, did you before we go, did you have anything else?
No, I mean, I know there was a question
Or
about
you
the
covered
Ramada
everything?
Inn. I don't
Oh yes.
have any major updates on that. I know that they're starting I guess they were able to get the developer out there to let them in the building to do an inspection. There hasn't been much report. I don't think there's a report out about that. Will my team, or really my team consists of me and a handful of folks, but I'll see if we can get some folks together to do some research on my page. We'll communicate that with you. I'll send you a message about that if we find something, but I'm not sure on in terms of updates. But I hope that we can either be in a position to either tear it down and take it back and use it for good. Just do something with it because it's an eyesore.
I know a little something. I sat in on the Economic Development Authority meeting, and the attorney, Chris Harrison's attorney, was there, and they did the walkthrough and the inspection with him, and they're supposed to be getting some type of an update within the next month. So in the next few weeks, we should be hearing something. I mean, he's supposed to be. It looks like he's still on board for developing it.
Oh, girl.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry.
all that I can think of with this is back in 2014, the previous owner was given 30 days to tear it down. And within the last week, they found a developer. The city found a developer to work on it. And they said, oh, never mind, you don't have to tear it down anymore. And here we are 7 years
Right.
later.
And it's funny,
7 years
I
later.
talk about this.
And he originally made was it a press statement or they had a ribbon cutting or something in 2015.
But we love
And
doing
in
ribbon
20
cuttings and groundbreakings and having nothing happen for a while. So I mean,
in
he just set the tone.
2018, his excuse was that it was the president's tariffs, steel tariffs, was the cause
Okay.
for what was going on. Yeah, that was 2018.
So
It
now
was
we can
early
develop now, though,
2019.
right? Because obviously, are the tariffs gone, or
They
what's the
have an
update on
arrest
that?
warrant for this man.
Oh,
So why are we not arresting him? That's what I want to know.
well, it was a pleasure being on your show.
I just,
I don't know.
sometimes I am a bit at a loss for words for some of this because I mean it should have been leveled. It was close to being leveled. I'm not a fan of city governments being involved in real estate in the first place.
Well, but
You
it can work. I mean, Michigan, I mean, they outsourced it, but I mean, they really did a good job turning their real estate around. But again, they were really close to that. You have to have the right people. We need to be investing in the right people. I mean, I don't mind paying
and you're
a
right,
city
and you're
manager.
right. It can work. There are some layers here that could have been addressed.
Yeah,
I mean, for one, I don't like the
but it's
involvement at
not going to
all.
work when you want to give the city money and they want to leverage it how they want to leverage it, not how you want to leverage it. And that's so common here.
And what is the obvious part in this? Everyone drives by this. You look at it. We know that other people who have blighted properties get fined. And
Yeah,
then we look
exactly.
at that. And I remember one of the first city council meetings that I went to, I think it was Trust and a few other people who said that I receive calls about this every day.
But again,
Every day. And this was
but I
years
think
ago. And so but the thing is that it it is illegal. There's a million code violations in there. For one, and when I first saw it, I said that's a fire hazard. I remember organizing a press conference over the municipality that I worked in over blighted properties, where we went outside with a microphone and named all of the property owners by name. We looked up all of
wow,
the owners,
wow.
and that was how we addressed that. Um, so, what is the reason that you are not finding this man? Why is it not boarded up? Either the owner can board it or the municipality can board it up,
I
and
have a
then you can
logical
sue
explanation
them
for
for the
this.
money. So, my point is that is a very obvious and blatantly corrupt thing to have that sit there rotting when you know where the owner is. You can drive to his office. So that means that
But
there's not any excuse. Any person who has had any municipal experience knows if you can go and find an owner like that, there's not a reason for it.
is it justifiable? Let's just be fair and clear. Is it justifiable to fine him for code violations when we have Peabody on Lee Avenue that literally just had a fire that broke out in it? It's not necessarily secure all around. There has been no effort to preserve that history. One of the first
Oh yeah, you can easily say,
all
"Oh, go
black.
look at that. Look at that. You own that over there." But
But again, you can't. And this is the kind of the counter argument is like, how can you go after an individual or a company if you can't even keep your own house in order? So it's a very
cities do
slippery
it all the
slope.
time, unfortunately.
I
And,
know,
and, and,
but
it's, and it's usually municipalities who own the most blight, which is the problem. Where the constituents are blamed are shamed for holding blight when
yeah.
they're almost never the ones who own the majority of it. But
Yeah.
such is life. And my thing, the issue that I had with the Ramada Inn is just that, being that this is I think that it's pretty obvious that that's a blatantly corrupt thing. To my understanding, but it was two council members who found the owner. You're not finding him for a reason because he was not being fined for a significant amount of time. And so, if you're going to grift, if you're going to skim from the top, I always say that I don't mind being lied to and that certain things just happen. Don't let it be the biggest building in the city.
Right, that we
You
see
know,
as you
can you
exit and
go
leave.
can you go steal from something that no one can see? That's hidden off where no one goes.
Right.
That's just it. It's completely insane that that happens to be what you're stealing from. And I sometimes I look at it and I say, if it stays like that, another year, someone's going to go to jail, or someone should go to jail.
It should.
And I know that you could do it. I've worked on this again. If they wanted to, when they finally got that arrest warrant for him, I said that could have happened a very long time ago. But even
Yes.
they couldn't deal with the resident complaining. Some things you just have to finally
You do.
address. But they
What
somehow can't find him when he
what do
has
we
other projects in the States.
I mean, not even 35 minutes away. So
Exactly.
well, I mean, I just appreciate you and Petersburg Solution having me. I the work that y'all do is great. Keep it up. And I mean, it's not about, I can't stress enough. I think you agree. It's not about holding leaders, our municipal leaders in a way that makes them out to be bad guys, but it's keeping the accountability and the pressure on them to perform
Yeah.
and create solutions and outcomes that benefit Petersburg residents, small business owners, but more importantly, our economic growth and our education outcomes, and more importantly, opportunities in the city.
And I would like to add that I actually defend our city leadership quite a bit,
You do.
and more so than some people would probably like sometimes. I say that because of the fact that I attend so much, and I talk to people, I have to give credit when it's due or acknowledge when they're actually working on something.
Yeah.
But of course, I am an equal opportunity beat up person, and I am always available for giving my 2 cents in advice. But Patrick, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Likewise.
I'm always around to help whenever you need. But
We'll do.
and again, you guys, Patrick Ingram, make sure that you follow Patrick Ingram for Petersburg on Facebook, and I will see you all soon.
Take care.
All right.